Desperate times call for desperate measures. Some in the Stop Trump movement are renewing their calls now for a third-party candidate to jump into the race. But the time is running out if they want to be serious about it. Filing deadlines for independent candidates, they are fast approaching in states like Texas. Look at that, about 10 days away now in Texas and North Carolina. To talk more about this, I'm joined by Bill Kristol. He's the editor of the Weekly Standard. He is firmly in the Never Trump camp. He says there is still time to mount a third-party challenge against Trump. So, Bill, thanks for joining us. I'll ask you about the third-party thing here in a second. But let me just ask you, a lot of people have likened what Republicans like you are going through with Donald Trump to the stages of grief. Where are you in that process? Are you accepting that he's likely to be the Republican nominee, or do you still think there's a chance to stop him here?
I think both things are true, Steve. You know, likely things don't always happen. The media seems to have invested an awful lot in sort of glorying in the fact likely to be the case that Trump is the nominee, and then somehow ridiculing people who, out of principle, are trying to stop him from being the nominee because he's bad for the party. Of course he's likely to be the nominee, and of course people like me are going to fight hard for Cruz Fiorina at this point, and Kasich if he does better in certain districts, to stop Trump, because we don't think he should be president of the United States, and those of us who've been Republicans don't think the Republican Party should nominate him. Is that really so hard to understand? Does that really make the Never Trump people look ridiculous? We may lose. You know what? Sometimes good causes lose, and sometimes a bad person gets nominated by a party. But if it's a party that you've been involved with, and it's one of the two major parties, and it's someone who's not fit to be president of the United States, that's a pretty bad thing. And I admire Carly Fiorina for taking Ted Cruz's offer, and I admire Ted Cruz for fighting hard. It's very nice for John Boehner, having left the House, to be giving well-paid speeches and make fun of Ted Cruz, and he's a golfing buddy of Donald Trump. Does John Boehner really think Donald Trump should be president of the United States? If he does, I've lost what respect I had for John Boehner.
Well, let me ask you, though, strategically, if you still want to stop Trump from getting the Republican nomination, you seem to be saying there, if I heard you right, targeting Kasich takes this district or this state, Cruz takes this district or that state. So they had this deal the other day, but it looks like that deal has just been blown to smithereens here. You got Kasich out there now telling people, well, vote for me anyway. You got Cruz saying there is no alliance. I just saw a poll in the last few minutes. Oregon, that's supposed to be the state that's ceded to John Kasich here, Cruz is actually 10 points ahead of Kasich in Oregon right now. Do you see a strategy still that could work?
I mean, it may turn out the only strategy is to be for Cruz Fiorina. I've always suspected that's the case. I wish John Kasich would get out. But some of us, and I think Ted Cruz, to be fair, tried to bend over backwards in a sense to say, well, maybe there's room for John Kasich here. And look, Ted Cruz isn't that popular among his fellow senators. But again, all the whining about him. Did he personally have the votes to shut down the government in 2013? I mean, was he so powerful that John Boehner, if he had willing to stand up to him ahead of time and prevented that tactical mistake? Could John Boehner not have rolled over a freshman senator who'd been there for 1 year? And incidentally, was it such a strategic disaster? What happened in the 2014 elections? It's kind of blurry in my mind, but I have somehow the feeling that Republicans won the Senate and gained seats in the House. So there's an awful lot of people in a petty way taking out their unhappiness, their dislikes, and I guess they're entitled to. But really, I think, for me, and maybe this is, this is my own view, Donald Trump should not be president. So if you think that in a strong way, you're willing to put a lot of other things aside and try to do your best to help stop Donald Trump from being president.
Well, so that leads me to my next question then. We set up this idea of a third-party candidacy. And look, if Donald Trump is likely to be the Republican nominee, if there's going to be another option on the ballot this fall for people like you, the planning really has to be happening right now. We're looking at those ballot deadlines looming. Is this something you want to pursue?
Yes, and planning is happening. It's tough, but I wouldn't overstate the deadline, Steve. You're right that Texas comes up first and then North Carolina. There's no other deadline before June 27th. Worst case, you could run in 48 states plus the District of Columbia. But the fact is Texas and North Carolina are very susceptible to a legal challenge, which people are preparing. The Supreme Court threw out other early deadlines in the 80s. I think they would throw out Texas and North Carolina. There's also the Reform Party on the ballot there. You could, in a pinch, do a write-in in 2 states. So, look, it's urgent. It's difficult. I don't want to make it seem as if it's somehow very easy to get a credible person to run, put him on the ballot or her on the ballot in 50 states and run a well-financed and effective campaign. But I do think with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, there's much more of a chance than usually, or almost than ever in my lifetime, I would say. And I've been amazed, and I've just been touting this and making some private phone calls and emails and some meetings and stuff, but I have no organization behind me. But I've been amazed at the kind of people who've been getting in touch and saying, hey, if there's a serious effort by a credible candidate, People really don't want, especially on the Republican and conservative side, really don't want to either vote for Donald Trump or have to vote for Hillary Clinton or just stay home.
Well, you know, though, and I'm sure you're already hearing this, what you'll hear from the Trump forces at that point is you're only going to help elect Hillary Clinton president. Would you be okay with that if that was the effect of sort of a rump movement here on the right?
I think nominating Donald Trump's going to elect Hillary Clinton president, honestly. That's one reason why the liberal media is so complacent and even sort of happy about the notion of Donald Trump as the Republican nominee. So I will take no responsibility for that. And honestly, a good independent candidate, and this is something you've talked about in the past, Steve, a good independent candidate could take Democratic and Republican votes. People are a little sick of the establishments of both parties, and someone new, someone with a real impressive character, someone who's a person of stature, I don't rule out, I don't agree that that person could only take Republican votes. It would be, you'd have to work hard, but I think there are Democratic, independent, and Republican votes to be gotten by a good independent nominee. It's uphill. I'm not making, it's not easy, but a lot of, good things aren't easy.
All right, Bill Kristol, thanks for the time.